Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived a kind woman named Meera and her son, Aarav. Meera was a widow who worked hard every day to provide for her son. Aarav was a bright and curious boy who loved listening to his mother's stories about life, destiny, and the power of fate. One evening, as they sat outside their little house, Aarav asked, "Mother, do you believe in fate? Can it really change our lives?" Meera smiled and said, "Yes, my dear. Fate is powerful. Sometimes we may not understand it, but it always leads us where we are meant to be. Let me tell you a story. A test of fate. Years ago, when Meera was young, she lived in a different village. She was engaged to a kind man named Rohan. They dreamed of a happy life together. But just before their wedding, a terrible flood hit their village. Houses were destroyed, and people lost their lives. Meera was separated from Rohan in the chaos, and despite searching for him for weeks, she never found him again. Heartbroken, she had no choice but to move to a new village and start over. With time, Meera learned to live again. She found work, made friends, and, most importantly, she gave birth to a beautiful son, Aarav. Though life was hard, she never lost hope. "Fate took something from me, but it also gave me you," she told Aarav, the mysterious stranger. One day, Aarav was playing near the river when he saw an old man struggling to carry a heavy bag. "Let me help you, sir," Aarav said kindly. The man smiled and accepted his help. As they walked, the old man asked, "What is your name, young boy?" "Aarav," he answered proudly. "My mother and I live in that house over there." When they reached the house, Meera came out to greet them. The moment she saw the old man, her heart skipped a beat. His face looked familiar, yet aged with time. The man stared at her in shock. "Meera," he whispered. Tears filled Meera's eyes. "Rohan? Is it really you?" she asked in disbelief. Fate brings them together. Rohan had survived the flood, but he had lost everything: his home, his family, and even the hope of finding Meera again. He had wandered from place to place until fate led him to this village. The moment he saw Meera, he realized that fate had finally brought them back together. Aarav listened in amazement as his mother and Rohan shared stories of their past. He now understood what his mother had always told him: fate works in mysterious ways. Sometimes it takes away what we love, only to return it when the time is right. A new beginning. From that day on, Rohan became a part of their family. He helped Meera with her work and guided Aarav like a father. Their small house was now filled with laughter and happiness. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, Aarav smiled and said, "Mother, you were right. Fate is powerful. It took you and Rohan apart, but it also brought you back together." Meera hugged her son and said, "Yes, my dear. We may not always understand fate, but we must trust that it will always lead us where we are meant to be." The journey of fate. As the days passed, Rohan and Aarav developed a deep bond. Rohan taught Aarav many things: how to carve wood, how to read the stars, and how to be strong even in difficult times. Aarav admired Rohan and wished he had known him sooner. One day, while working in the fields, Rohan found an old letter in his bag. It was a letter he had written to Meera long ago but had never been able to deliver. It said, "No matter where fate takes me, I will always find my way back to you." Tears filled Meera's eyes as she read it. "Even when we were apart, fate was still guiding us back together," she whispered. A twist of fate. One evening, a traveler arrived in the village with news of a grand merchant looking for skilled workers. He was offering good wages and a better life in the city. Rohan and Meera discussed it and decided it was time for a change. They packed their belongings, said goodbye to their old home, and set off for a new beginning. The journey was long, but with every step, they felt that fate was leading them in the right direction. When they reached the city, Rohan found work with a merchant, and Meera started her own small business, making beautiful handmade clothes. Aarav enrolled in a school, something he had always dreamed of. Fate's reward. Years passed, and Aarav grew into a fine young man. He often thought about how fate had shaped their lives. If not for the flood, if not for that day by the river, if not for the traveler's news, none of this would have happened. One evening, as they sat together under the same sky, Aarav smiled and said, "Mother, I now understand. Fate is not just about losing or gaining something. It's about trusting the journey." Meera nodded and said, "Yes, my dear. Fate may be uncertain, but it always leads us home." And so, their story continued, a story written by fate, filled with love, hope, and the belief that everything happens for a reason.